brother!
And welcome to a ranking video where today Ben and I are each going to give our personal ranking for the 7 main canon Harry Potter books because somehow we haven't done that before.
I know, I literally asked the staff to go through and without telling us pull what our answers were the last time that we did this, and at least according to them, we were unable to locate any video where we've ever done this before, which is shocking because we've been making Harry Potter content on the internet for 10 years?
Yeah.
And have a Harry Potter read-through podcast.
Yes, so somehow we have not ranked them. I think we ranked the movies one time.
Once upon a time,
and
yes.
we were able to include all the Fantastic Beasts movies in there as well.
Right. But
Yeah.
this is going to be, I believe at least, the first time we have ever ranked the books, which I think is going to be very interesting.
Was it hard to do it when you were like going through?
It is. I mean, it's definitely like that sensation of like picking between your favorite children.
It really was. Like there was like my bottom two, I was like, okay, those are my bottom. And then after that I was like, well,
I know, yeah.
Huh.
I feel like there's a bunch of situations where I could be like, this could have been a tie.
Yeah.
Or there's like a reason why I've lifted this one up a placement. So I can't wait to hear what you've got. We're gonna go through book by book and basically give what our assignment is for each one in order, starting with Philosopher's Stone.
Hey, brother! All right, Philosopher's Stone, book number 1. We're each going to reveal our rank at the same time.
Yes. All right, so you ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, you had it. This is my bottom one.
No,
you had it at 5.
Hey,
man.
Okay. The start of the
start.
saga.
I know. I was surprising. I was going through it and I was just like, this or that, this or that, this or that, and I was just like, I guess it's there. I guess that's where it's at.
I feel like I know down the line some arguments that you will make that will be very interesting.
Yeah.
I think Philosopher's Stone does a lot. I think for me, there's a good possibility it could have tied with a different book for this particular spot.
Okay.
So it maybe edged something out in part due to the fact that it is the first book in the series. It is our launching off point. I feel like it's getting some
it's getting like the Toy Story points.
Yes, exactly. Like some
Yeah.
like non-objective, more subjective, like
Right.
deep in my feels, sort of just like it's the beginning of everything.
It's
You're
the
a wizard,
beginning
Harry.
of everything. I know, yeah. There is all that. There's like it's the beginning of everything. It's your entry into the wizarding world. I mean, and it's like, like whenever we do like Pixar rankings, it's like, it's hard not to put Toy Story really near the top because it was the first one.
Yeah,
like,
but arguably the original Toy Story is the worst Toy Story.
Yeah, well, maybe Toy Story 4. But,
conversation for another day.
We made that video already.
Yeah. Okay, continue.
Yeah, but so it's like I agree. Like I was like, is this gonna be like a hot take saying this is my least favorite? But like, here's what I thought is whenever I'm like going to reread the entire series, part of me is like, okay, like I'm excited to do it, but then I'm like, I guess I gotta get through the first one. Which, like, it's not a problem. It's like a short book, and it's not unenjoyable. But like when you're as constantly immersed in the wizarding world as you and I are doing what we do.
Yeah.
Like the opening book is like, it's kind of like rereading the basics. It's like you're getting reintroduced to everything, and there is a certain magic to that, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's also sort of like I know all the rules, get to the good part, Voldemort's like, he's a threat, but he's not back yet. Like, we're meeting everyone, like it's all great. I mean, and to say like I don't like it would be inaccurate. Like, I love them all.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah, it's like something was always going to be 7.
Something had to be 7.
Something that we can all agree that we all share a love for.
Yeah.
So like I don't think that there's necessarily like I don't read it as if shade is being thrown by you at Sorcerer's Stone or Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah.
But no, I think like I can't help but ever go back to like those days like when Dad was reading it to us when we were kids. Like
I know.
Like we're sitting like on their bed growing up, and like Hagrid showing up and knocking down the door. The letters from no one.
I know. I do remember like laying on Mom and Dad's bed as Dad was reading it to us, and him reading the part where like, you're a wizard, Harry, and I was just like, mind blown.
Right.
Because like, it's like when you watch a movie when no one's told you anything about it other than the title.
Right.
You know, and you're just like, I don't, you know, like you're going through and like some weird things have happened and these letters are showing up, but like at no point was I like, I bet he can do magic. You know?
Right.
Like I had no idea where it was going in like very little me's head. So it was mind blowing. And then, like from that point on, I was like, I want to let's keep going.
Yeah.
What's gonna happen? What do you mean he's a wizard? What's that mean? You know?
Right.
Let's go.
I understand where you're coming from. But yeah, I don't know. Then I feel like there's so many amazing things that are introduced in this story. I mean, you've got the Philosopher's Stone itself, you've got the Mirror of Erised, you've got the invisibility cloak.
You do, but like the mirror doesn't really come back again.
Like further on down the line.
Like further on down the line.
It still has always been one of my favorite magical artifacts.
I mean, it is. I mean, it is a definitely a thing Dumbledore is using in the first book to like really try and get like the full scope of Harry's character all at once.
Right.
You know, like he's like, I gotta take a look at this boy here and see what he's up to in his southern accent.
Yeah,
you
because
know
he's Daniel Craig from Knives Out.
He's Benoit Blanc. You know? Harry Potter, just to remake Harry Potter, but Dumbledore is played by Daniel Craig playing Benoit Blanc.
I love it.
There you go. Yeah. So I do love that, and I love but I feel like there's a lot of things like that in the first one where it's like they're introduced in the first one and then they're gone. So you have like the Philosopher's Stone. It's like it's what the book is called and it's what they're trying to prevent, but it's never actually in action.
Like you don't get to see it turn into gold.
It doesn't do its thing, you know? And it's like, so there's that. And like the mirror shows up and it's so cool and it's so revealing about the characters and helps you get to know them. But then it's gone. Fluffy is in there and the Fluffy's gone. Norbert and the Norbert's gone. You know, like there's a bunch of like world building that goes into it. And there are like, in particular, this is something we've like come across more doing through the Gryffindor. Like, when Harry meets the centaurs and they're doing their whole, like, Mars is bright tonight.
Right.
Business over there. Like, what they're saying and, like, why they are so mad at Firenze for interrupting Harry and Voldemort's little showdown there is because what they're seeing in the stars is that Voldemort is going to kill Harry in the forest. And they're like, they're both here right now. We already know that. Like, this is what the stars are telling us. The problem is, the stars are very vague. So if they're off by 7 years, who cares? That's like a rounding error to them.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. But all the necessary ingredients, even Hagrid being out there. Like, Hagrid's there in the forest when Harry goes to die.
Yeah. So they think what the stars are saying is supposed to happen is that Voldemort is going to kill Harry in the woods. And they are saying that. They're just there, like, 6 years too early.
Right.
Because that does happen in Deathly Hallows. And, like, that's what the centaurs think is going to happen later on. Voldemort kills Harry. Obviously, Harry comes back, so it's all good.
So this is just occurring to me in real time. When the title of that chapter is The Forest Again, is that because it can't be called the Forbidden Forest because we've already had a chapter in Philosopher's Stone called the Forbidden Forest?
Is that what it's a reference to, the forest again? Man, I'm not...
That's what it's called.
I mean, that's what it's called. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
that's like a real time like, oh,
like, yeah,
dang.
why is it called the forest again? I mean, is it just a nod to like we've been in here so many times? But no, I think you're right. I think it's a nod to that moment.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty clever. That's a payoff that happens way late in the entire saga.
And that being said, there are a bunch of things in Philosopher's Stone that are introduced and then sort of like disappear. There's also things that are introduced and then are vitally important to the rest of the story, and those are the things I love, like Harry catching the snitch with his mouth.
Yes,
or
yeah.
Getting the invisibility cloak, getting the wand and knowing about the twin cores, but like not why that's important yet.
Right. Yeah. One of the things I always wonder, like going back to the first book, is whether or not the selection of Holly like a Holly wand was supposed to be a joke on the fact that Harry is famous.
Right.
So it's Hollywood.
Yeah.
Hollywood wand. Like that always feels like a little piece of clever wordplay to me.
Right, it does feel like clever wordplay, but then like woodplay. There's some wordplay.
Yeah.
But then like if you look up like the meaning of Hollywood, it also fits Harry.
Yeah,
really
it does.
Well.
Yeah, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. Then I mean I like the obstacle course. I mean I think when it comes to one of like our biggest contributions to the fandom, it's probably like Dumbledore's big plan, which sets off and fits most like a glove during Philosopher's Stone as well.
Absolutely.
Where like all of the obstacles that they have to face down and challenge, in order to get to the Philosopher's Stone at the end, are all challenges that are like well equipped for each of Harry's best friends.
Yeah, they're like tailor-made for them.
Right, like Hermione has a logic puzzle, Ron is obviously exceptionally good at chess. I've always sort of had the theory in my head that Neville was supposed to go with them.
Yeah, like that's why the Devil's Snare is there.
Yeah, and Dumbledore almost gets that right. Like Neville does come down, he just tries to stop them, which otherwise comes with one of my favorite lines of all time, which is that like it's a difficult thing to stand up to your enemies, but even more challenging to stand up to your friends.
Yep.
It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends.
Which I think is just an absolutely amazing line.
Such a line. So true.
It is very true. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's like, when you think about the challenges that are laid out before him and like the people that are there and like ultimately how impossible it is for Quirrell to get the stone. Anyway, it's sort of like, what was the point of the challenges? Because like Dumbledore could have just put the mirror in the Great Hall with a sign that said, we put the stone in here, and he was never going to get it.
Yeah, I mean, your motives would never allow you to do what Harry did, which is what partially what is so remarkable to Dumbledore about Harry in the end.
Right.
If anything, Harry going down there was the most dangerous thing because he alone was the one uniquely capable of getting it out.
Right, yes.
So basically, you sent the person with the key down into the chamber where the person wanting the key was.
Right, exactly, all that.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you're also testing Harry's ability to handle different challenges and problem solve, and also then like teaching him how he'll have to rely on his friends.
Yes. Which is, I mean, and friendship is, I think, at the core of everything. It's one of the central themes that I think carves its way through the entire series.
There are more important things. Friendship and bravery.
So, very important. The one like small con that I think I have is at the end we sort of get that like big detail from Dumbledore that like Snape hates Harry because James did something that Snape could never forgive him for. Save his life.
Yeah.
And then it's like one of those things that makes you think that the big relationship is between Snape and James, and they certainly have a big relationship, but there's no two ways about it. The more important relationship is Snape and Lily.
Oh, the thing James did to Snape that he could never forgive was marrying Lily.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, and then like, I feel like it's sort of like a weak explanation, so I don't know if you dock points from Prisoner for this, or it's a bad setup for Philosopher's Stone, but like, when you ultimately discover that it was like James's own best friends that were putting him in harm's way in the first place by way of attempting to get Snape to go down to the Shrieking Shack.
I wonder if there's a way to interpret it such that saving his life, like marrying Lily was saving Snape's life in a way or something. Like that seems...
It feels like you're trying to grant more interpretation after the fact than was ever intended in that moment.
It's just like the answer is he's just lying to Harry.
Yeah.
Like he knows the reason why and he's just not telling him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, 5 for me, 7 for you.
7 for you.
Moving on.
Should we move on to Chamber?
Let's do it. All right, you ready? All right. So,
Chamber of Secrets. Let's see, are you ready? I'm curious where you put this one. I feel like this is one that gets really low on a lot of people's lists.
Yep. Let's see. Yep. All right, so 3, 2, 1.
You have it as 7. I put it as 5.
Okay, so we switch a root on 1, 2 a little bit.
We did, yeah. There we go.
I was curious. I was like, Lockhart is going to float Chamber for Jay.
Me?
Well, there's no doubt about that. This is the thing. It's like, when I'm trying to think of like Chamber of Secrets, there's like the actual book itself, and then there's like the things that have been like built into that particular story over the years. So it's like, even though it's Chamber the book, it's like very difficult for me to like disassemble like all the spaghetti that is all the other things I love about Chamber.
Like, do you mean Salazar Slytherin?
Like, I mean, I like that we start getting some of the Founders lore in this one. I love the Basilisk, of course.
Yeah, of course, naturally.
You know, love the Basilisk. And then, of course, Lockhart is just... I love Lockhart and Dobby both a lot. I mean, Lockhart's, such a buffoon and so, like, pretty evil. But, like, it's like one where it's like the movie bleeds in. It's like, not just the movie, but then also, like, the Jim Dale reading of Lockhart.
Yes.
Are, like, they're so funny. Like... That is such a core memory for me, is like when I think we were driving up to our grandparents' house and like Dad had like we'd already read the Harry Potter books, and it was like one of those big gaps between, I think it was probably 4 and 5.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like, we've read 4 and there's a long gap and we're waiting down. I was like, oh, guess what? I got the books on tape. And that's what we had, was Chamber of Secrets. And we had a 12-hour drive and, well, I mean, literally tapes, switching them in and out. Cassettes.
Yeah.
And we listened to the whole thing, and like I just remember the Harry. Like, that has been a joke in our family for, like, our whole lives.
Our whole lives, yeah. It's never gone away.
Never gone away.
We could go to dinner at their house this weekend and it would come up.
It would come up, yeah.
No, so that's true. That's true. My counter to that is that I think Chamber of Secrets has a lot of like great redeeming qualities. Like, and again, like this is not me like dogging on any of the books because I like all of them. But you know, I love the Sword of Gryffindor. I love the Phoenix lore that we get. You know,
I love the Phoenix lore. What I don't like is how much of like a Deus Ex Machina Fox ends up being.
Yeah, like basically comes in and just like saves the day.
Yeah, it just sort of saves the day. And it's like, well, the basilisk is this giant thing, and you don't have a weapon, and it can petrify you. And he's like, hey, I blinded it, and I gave you a sword. And
yes,
does it have? I have the one thing that heals basilisk venom.
Yes, it's awfully convenient that like, you know, because like any other Horcrux, if Harry had tried to stab it with, you know, any other object, like a spare bone in the graveyard or a rock in the forest or something like that. It's like so many things wouldn't have done it. He just happens to be equipped with like the one thing that he specifically needs.
Yeah.
However, that being said, Voldemort is constantly his own downfall as the heir of Slytherin. So that actually is not like, it's being nitpicky for sure, because this is something like Voldemort takes Harry's own blood into himself in order to resurrect himself. He could have had anybody else's blood because plenty of other people would have been like in opposition to Voldemort.
Right, it just has to be like enemy of Voldemort.
Yes, and Harry himself even clarifies that. I feel like we've brought that up in the past before, and people are like, no, I'm pretty sure it had to be Harry. And it's like it does not have to be Harry.
Yeah.
Because anybody who opposes Voldemort's regime, the only people it couldn't be is probably
like the Death
Eaters. Yeah. So there's that. But then I think that I think Chamber of Secrets it may possess the worst chapter in the entire saga.
Oh, do you mean no?
Yes.
With what?
It is literally the title chapter. Chapter 16 in Chamber of Secrets, I think, might be the worst chapter in the whole series, and it is titled Chamber of Secrets.
It is titled Chamber of Secrets. Why do you hate that chapter?
It is the most convoluted chapter ever. Like, the necessary steps that were involved are such a force in order to get the right people in the right place, in order to go down and start like
be like, oh, this is why it has to be Harry, Ron, and Lockhart and nobody else.
Harry, Ron, and Lockhart and nobody else. I don't mind that like Hermione figures it out and is petrified beforehand.
Yeah.
But like I think the series of events that goes down is that like Harry and Ron are being escorted to and from class by Lockhart when they convince Lockhart that they don't need an escort because they're basically all the way there. And then they're running off to go and try and do something. I can't even remember.
They're trying to go to the bathroom because they want to talk to Myrtle.
They want to talk to Myrtle. Yeah. Right. They run into McGonagall in the process. Then they tell McGonagall, no, we need to go and talk to... Hermione. We want to go see Hermione. And they're like... McGonagall has like a weird soft spot. And they're like, okay, go talk to Hermione. And then you go talk to Hermione where you figure out that Hermione has actually figured it out because of the piece of paper in her hand.
And then they go to tell the teachers, but that's when it's revealed that Ginny is in the chamber.
Yes.
And they're like so in shock that they don't end up doing it.
Yes. Yeah. So there are these like gigantic, like coincidental moments that are all happening all inside of one chapter just to get like Harry and Ron and Lockhart to be the ones who travel down together. And then even the fact that they're just sort of like, yeah, Lockhart, like it's almost as if the teachers in the moment are like their annoyance with Lockhart outweighs their concern for Ginny. So
it does feel like that. Yeah, they're like, you told us you knew what to do, so go ahead and do it.
Like, we'll all just go turn in for the night. You've got this under control, surely.
Right. It's like, okay, you guys know that that's a bad idea, like actively.
Right. Yeah, it's like you can say that. Go send him off. Go send him to do whatever silly thing Lockhart's
Why don't you go ahead and just call him on his bluff, you know?
Right.
But not by forcing him to do it. Just in the moment, they could just be like, we know you're a fraud. Please step aside. We have serious business to do.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It seems like at that point in time, basically what should be happening is they're just like, you know, putting him in manacles or something in his office. And they're like, okay, time to go and figure out what's going on. Harry, Ron, do you guys know things?
Yeah, right.
Like, let's sort this out. And I mean, again, you know, the whole point of the story is that Harry needs to be the one to do it. I know that there are sometimes the situations where adults could be doing more. They don't end up doing more. Things end up being put on Harry's back. But like, if I wanted to be critical of something in the name of marking something last, that's also part of where I'm coming from.
That's part of where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that, very fair. But like I think this one, it also introduces the first Horcrux to us.
It does,
in the form of the diary,
yep.
which is like, I think it's good and bad. It's like, it's good that it's introduced so early on, so that like later on when Dumbledore's like, Horcruxes, actually we already dealt with one of those, and you're like, oh, that's cool. The problem is that like the way in which the diary was used is so different from all the other ones, and it creates so much confusion.
Yes.
For everybody, which honestly has been good for us because we can just explain it, you know.
Right. Yeah. Spend a ton of time like deep diving that way.
Yeah. So I like that. I like that's fun. I love meeting Tom Riddle, and then there's like the whole like Tom Marvolo Riddle, I am Lord Voldemort reveal.
Oh, I do love that.
It is like, that is like, no way.
Yes.
That's so good. It's so good.
You
get to meet like young Voldemort, and that just feels so dangerous. And it's like Voldemort himself isn't even really there, but it's like, no, he's still a threat. Even when you think he's not a threat, he's a threat.
I know.
Yeah.
Yep. One of my like all-time goals in reading fiction is to figure out like an anagrammed name before it's revealed.
Before it's revealed.
I just want to be able to pull that off so badly.
I know.
And I think that was baked into me since like 1999.
Oh, since
Chamber of
then.
Secrets came
I know.
out. Yeah, it's just like someday we will get it.
It's gonna happen.
We
It's
will
gonna
get it.
happen again. Someone else is gonna use this trick.
Right.
Yeah, and we'll get it whenever it happens. I also love like the whole like in Philosopher's Stone, there's like the Hagrid setup for like, oh, I got expelled in my 3rd year, and it's like you kind of get to go through that mystery.
You do,
a little bit. You get like resolution, what feels like pretty quickly. So it's like. And that sort of like establishes like a pattern that'll keep happening. Where it's like, oh yeah, there's a mystery, and it's like we'll keep paying off like 1 or 2 mysteries per book.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Whereas like, you know, but then like the Snape thing, it's like, yeah, that's gonna be the very, very, very last one, basically.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
They're gonna make you wait and wait.
Yep.
And wait for that one.
Eventually.
So, there you go.
Eventually.
Actually, last little bonus thought here, though. Somebody just recently recommended this idea to us, and we are obsessed with it. But the idea is that Tom Riddle, in the moment, had not intended to run into Myrtle.
Oh, yeah.
And so the end result there is that he emerges in the girls' bathroom, and it just so happens to be the case that Myrtle is there. They are both surprised by one another. Myrtle is killed by the basilisk, and the thinking is that the diary wasn't actually Tom Riddle's.
Right.
But instead, Moaning Myrtle's.
But Myrtle's, yes, and he's like, I guess I'll use this.
Right, like
which
you
is then
needed-
why it's a Muggle why it's bought on like Vauxhall Road.
Exactly, which has
Yes.
always been one of those things that kind of bothered us because it's like this is like one of his most vital and important artifacts, and it's bought at like a Muggle store. Like,
Right.
That seems so. It seems to go against everything that is Tom Riddle. But if it was more like opportunistic, and Myrtle seems like the kind of character who would write in a diary.
It seems more likely that like a kind of bullied teenage girl would be keeping a diary than it does the charming,
Super
handsome,
handsome.
winning everything Tom Riddle.
Yeah, prefect Tom Riddle. Yeah.
Not that he couldn't be, because that's more or less what's believed.
Right, yes,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah, I mean, that is the proposed explanation.
That's-
but
yeah.
I kind of just like this one more.
It feels like it fits a little more. Then I love the idea that Myrtle's hit through the head with the diary, and she's like, doesn't even realize it's hers.
It's her own diary.
Yeah, it's her
Yep,
own diary.
Yep, that's a good one. So, all right, Chamber.
Chamber. There we
5,
go.
7.
Bam. All right, we are on to Prisoner of Azkaban, which this is where it officially started getting really hard, because we're reading this book right now through the Gryffindor, and I'm just like really loving it.
I was in the exact same boat as you. Like, so this one's really, really challenging for me, and I feel like it might still be like a little bit shocking. Prisoner has always been one of those where I feel like people, like when you talk to people out in the world, they're like, oh my gosh, like one of my favorites is Prisoner. And I think I've always sort of been like, really?
Yeah.
Like, Prisoner? Like, oh, all right. Yeah, okay. And I do think that, like, you know, as we're going through and through the Gryffindor and reading it so methodically, you're like, man, this is well built. It's well fleshed out. Like, it works extremely well. That being said, let's present the scores.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Been to 4. I'm higher than you.
You did go higher than
Oh,
me.
man, yeah.
So you can sort of see a little bit of a pattern for me, which is that the front end of the series is weighed lesser than the back end of the series.
Well, I mean, I had Philosopher's Stone at 7, so
you did.
know,
You did.
so
Yep.
there's
Yep.
that.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Prisoner, I think for the longest time I considered it maybe my least favorite. So the fact that it's climbed up this high, I think, says something here in more recent memory. And I think that, like, growing up, I was always like, it doesn't have Voldemort. Like, it's the one without Voldemort.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I always, like, really, that was always, like, kind of a bummer. It's like, it's Sirius Black, but then it's not even Sirius Black. You know?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
it's the rat. It's
just
Scabbers.
the rat. It's Scabbers. Peter. Ugh, gross. that guy. But then it's like the more you go back and the more like you like get to know the characters a little better, especially like when we're rereading it through like so methodically on the podcast. Like Lupin especially, like I've always liked Lupin, but my goodness, Lupin is just a gem. I just love that guy.
He is so tremendous and great and kind and sweet and patient and like thoughtful and Lupin is a really, really great character. Like that's one where I've always said like I'm more like a serious kind of guy, like Sirius Black than a Lupin kind of guy. And I'm like, how could you dislike Lupin?
I know,
like,
he's so good.
He's so good.
He's like easily the best teacher of anyone in the series.
Yes.
I think pretty much.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, Dumbledore maybe. But like, or maybe Harry as like the DA teacher.
But he learned from Lupin.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think Lupin is probably the best teacher in the whole series, like including like McGonagall and Flitwick and all them.
Right.
So yeah, I always love his character. And then we're reading through it right now. I will say I never really the Buckbeak trial. I always find kind of like I don't care that much about it.
I have the exact same thing. The Buckbeak storyline is just contrived. Like it's like. It starts on the first day of class, and it literally persists through the whole story.
Yeah.
And it kind of takes away Hagrid from, like, being, like a fun addition at any point. Because he's always just sort of, like, moping about the trial.
Sort of moping about the trial. Yeah. It feels like, because on the one hand, like, it seems like Draco didn't have a whole lot to do in this book, so this is sort of, like, what Draco's up to the whole time.
That's the other big one, too. Yeah. So Draco, it's just, like... He just keeps pretending that, like, his arm is injured. And it's like, everyone in the wizarding world like, Harry grew back an entire arm's worth of bones in a night.
Right.
Like, it's such an unbelievable... Like, it's frustrating to me that anybody believes that Draco is actually hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's frustrating. And then, like, Hagrid is supposed to be the Care of Magical Teachers creature. And... Care of Magical Creatures teacher.
Nailed it.
There we go. And he does nothing, like, with that. He has, like, one exciting day of hippogriffs, and then it's, like, literally flobberworms for, like, most of the first half of the year, and then they do, like, fire salamanders, and then you stop hearing what they're doing.
Right, yeah. It's like the Umbridge problem, except it's arguably worse. Like, you know, it's like Umbridge's whole thing is that she's just not teaching them any actual magic.
Right.
It's like, just like, you know, no wands in this class. We're just learning, like, you know, magical theory or whatever.
Right.
It's like,
that a theoretical knowledge will be sufficient to get you through your examinations, which, after all, is what school is all about.
At least that's something, but it's like just wasting everybody's time with flobberworms to the point where it's the final exam. It's like, okay, whatever.
I know. It's like, you're already mad at Draco, and he's like, what's the point of them? Like, what do you do with them? And he's like, oh, that's next lesson. And it's like, was it? Was it next lesson?
Right.
We still don't know.
Right, yeah. So that I think that storyline is like, it's so central, it's so important to the story, and it otherwise feels like a little bit like, okay, I can't believe this is still going on. I also can't believe that like Lucius is still successfully getting away with his antics of just being able to go and buy off everybody in the name of like murdering a big beast.
I know. It's like that's the other thing. It's like, it's so petty. Like, Malfoy's big victory that he wants to go on for this year isn't even getting Hagrid fired. It's just killing a hippogriff. And it's like, it's just not that big a deal. And the fact that Lucius takes it so seriously, it's like, it makes me lose respect for him as a villain. You know?
Right.
Like, you know, teach your son better villainy, dude. Come on.
Yeah.
Like,
aim higher.
Right, exactly. Aim higher. And you don't even succeed, you know?
Yeah.
At the end of it all.
There's not, it's not great on that front, but that's sort of like the chief complaints, I think. Otherwise, you've got Hermione's time turner antics, which I think are always like, that's like one of those things that, especially as a young reader, I really enjoyed my rereads.
Yeah.
Because it was like, my first pass, I was just not a sophisticated enough reader to be picking up on the fact that, like, this was an issue.
Yeah.
Like, I kept thinking, like, well, if it was a problem, Harry would have thought it was a problem. But Harry's just always so distracted with his own stuff.
Right.
That, like, it doesn't end up really flagging for Harry the same way it definitely does for Ron, who's like, how are you doing this?
Yeah, and it's just sort of like, you're like, who cares, Ron? Like, what does it matter?
Right,
you know?
and Hermione's always right, and so you're just like, Ron, I'm sure you're mistaken.
Right,
and Hermione's
exactly.
got it. Yeah.
It, like, uses your, like, interpretation of the characters against you.
Right.
A little bit, and it's like, even if it is interesting, you want to figure it out, it's just like, it's like, it's still inconsequential to the plot until it isn't.
Right.
And then it's been there the whole time.
Yep.
And then you've got the threat of Sirius Black the entire book, and then the like twist that he's a good guy at the end. Yeah, who's been like falsely imprisoned, and then you've got like the Peter Pettigrew reveal, and you learn that Scabbers has been a man the whole time. Like that was all like mind blowing. And like right now, the chapter we just did on the podcast was the Cat, Rat, and Dog, and that's like when you learn that, and like that whole chapter is just like really, really fun.
It's really fun. I mean, it's hilariously like, it's like, guys, spit out the words you mean.
Yeah.
Like, someone tell them earlier in the conversation, the rat is Peter Pettigrew. He's an animagus.
Right.
Because it does build up the entire time where it's like, come on, guys, give him the bone. But you're right. Like, it's a really great chapter. You start to get like a glimpse into the backstory of the Fidelius charm for the Potters, the idea of the secret keepers. You get like a huge, you know, you get to fill in a lot of the blanks on what the Marauders were like, what James was like as like a young man, and sort of like what their friendship like represented. Yeah, so I think there's lots of really cool stuff packed into like that whole.
Right, and then it's like all of their friendship is built around the fact that Lupin is a werewolf, and then it's like that's also a mystery to you, the reader, and then as you learn it, it like comes to pass, and that's of course been set up the whole time. There's all these little Easter eggs, like the crystal, the Bogart becoming the crystal ball or the moon.
The moon, yeah.
The constant sicknesses, the Snape essay about it, which this is a fun thing. Like Lupin turns around and assigns a vampire essay, which is like feels like a shot at Snape because
it definitely
vampires are not on the final exam.
No, they are not. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's like it seems like a soft little nudge where I don't think that Snape is actually a vampire, but I do think that basically this was Lupin being like, fine, you're gonna do werewolves? You look like a bat.
Yeah.
Batman.
Yeah. I love, this is also where you get the map is introduced, the Marauder's map, which is just one of the best magical objects. And
the Patronus.
The Patronus is in this one. Yeah, we get introduced to the Dementors, and like it's funny when you read it now because like once you have all the context, it's just like, man, the Dementors are so bad. But it's like in that time period before Voldemort returned, like everyone thinks of the Dementors as this like really good thing.
Right. Yeah. They are safety.
Yeah, like they are safety. They're keeping us safe. Like they're terrible beings, but like it's, you know, they're the lesser of two evils basically, and we really like them. They're great, and it's like. But like even Dumbledore is like, nope, don't like them.
Yeah. Which is more than enough for us to be like, okay, maybe we don't like them.
Right. It's like,
if Dumbledore doesn't like them, I don't like them either.
I don't like them either. Exactly. Yeah. But like you go through the book thinking like they must be necessary. Like it should be clear to you that the Dementors are the bad guys, and like if the Dementors are the bad guys, then maybe Sirius isn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no.
But no,
it doesn't always click.
It's Peter, the rat.
The rat, obviously.
Ron's rat.
Yeah.
Who could see that coming? But yeah, then ultimately I think, you know, you do have that big moment where like all of a sudden Peter is back, and there's this like brief half chapter where you're like, wait a second, is James still around?
Oh, I know.
You know, and it's like, because I mean, basically this whole time we've been led to believe that like, you know, Peter was dead, you know, and then Sirius was in prison. Lupin was just being like sort of like a social outcast by being a werewolf, but all of a sudden everybody's coming back together.
All the Marauders are back at once.
Someone cast a great big Patronus to knock them all away.
Right, and they kind of look like Harry, and you're like, oh my god, are all the Marauders back? Is Harry gonna have a dad? And even before that, you're like, is Harry gonna get to go live with Sirius? Like, there was like a nice half hour where you think everything's really gonna work out for Harry.
Yes.
But obviously it's not.
Not so much. Yeah, so I think that's pretty great. And honestly, the moment where Harry finally does like step out and realize that he can do it because he's already done it before.
Yeah.
I knew I could do it this time because, well, I'd already done it.
It's like, and
it's
then,
like
then
such weird twisted logic how it all works.
I know, but
yeah, that's very fun. Even getting introduced into Trelawney in this book is really fun because like you hear her make the prophecy about Wormtail escaping, and like, even though that's actually her second prophecy, it, like, when you find out there's a first one, you're not like, oh, randomly there's been a prophecy the whole time. It's like, no, the prophecy's clearly been there the whole time.
Right.
And now you've been introduced to the idea of it ahead of time, so when you get the second one, it's like, that makes more sense, because actually that was the second one.
Right, and the first one even came from Trelawney as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, how about that?
Dumbledore even sets it up. He's like, oh, that brings a total of real predictions up to 2. And you're like, well, what was the other one?
Well, yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, but even when he says it, it almost sounds like a throwaway thought. Like, oh, I guess maybe she had like another one somewhere. Right. I doubt that was that important.
Right, yeah. No, centrally important. It's basically what drives the entire plot forward. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that's about it for Prisoner for me. Anything else you've got? Any other notes?
I think that is pretty much all the things I had written down about Prisoner.
Okay.
I'm surprised it's a 6 for you though.
Yeah, well, I literally wrote down it could be tied for 5th. Mm-hmm. I gave the nudge to Philosopher's Stone 4 or 5 basically because it's the first. So I was these were parked right next to each other.
I see.
Yeah. So it was extremely close, and that was basically the deciding factor. So it's not really that I would say that anything specifically beats it. Like Philosopher's Stone doesn't beat it out just on merit alone.
Right.
It has that like extra brownie point.
It has the brownie point of like the nostalgia entry point.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All right.
Being the first.
Well, there we go. On to Goblet.
Goblet of Fire.
Here we go.
We're at the middle installment.
The middle installment of the series. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready? I'm curious where this is for you.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, you have it at number 1.
I have it at number 1.
This is your favorite one.
This is my favorite one.
Oh my gosh,
it is
that's
indeed.
so exciting. I mean, it is very. So, I mean, honestly, like for the longest time, Goblet of Fire was my favorite book.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like when we were reading them growing up, like when the first 3 came out, like our dad read them to us.
Yeah.
And then like by the time the 4th one came out, it was like, okay, I think you're all big enough to just sort of read them
like get
on
your
your own.
copies.
So like I remember like when the 4th book came out, it was like the very next day we were going on a week-long vacation to the beach.
Okay.
And so like it was already like this big family trip thing, and Dad left work because he was like a news anchor, so he would always leave work at like midnight or something. Yep. But Barnes & Noble was open because Harry Potter was coming out. Yeah, so he went and got 3 copies, and we each had a copy.
Yep.
Going to the beach, and then we were reading it in the car, like on the way there, and that was exciting. And I mean, it was just so leaps and bounds, like I thought better than the first 3. Like, I loved the Quidditch World Cup. That was so cool.
Yep.
I loved the Triwizard Tournament. I love the tasks. I love Barty Crouch and the Mad Eye Moody reveal. The Voldemort. It's basically the Empire of the Harry Potter books.
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
No, it really is, and I think you're exactly right. Like I read on the Quidditch World Cup, the Triwizard Tournament, the Death Eaters, Mad Eye Moody, Unforgivable Curses, Floor, Crumb, Dragons, Yule Ball, Beneath the Lake, the Maze, like. There's so much going on.
Yeah.
The Triwizard Tournament in particular, I think, provides a tremendous backbone for the school year.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of times, like you'll notice, like in the books as you're reading through, it'll be like, and then it was the end of January.
Yep.
And like all of a sudden, it's just like a sentence will basically just be like 4 weeks passed.
Right.
And it's like, what?
Yeah. Okay. I guess Harry just went to classes.
Right. Yeah. Like nothing. He just
so.
had like uneventful days. That doesn't seem like Harry. And maybe it's just because all we're ever seeing are the eventful days. But I do think they set it up really nicely. I think that the it's also like, if you want to look at this being the middle installment, and then the next 3 books, I feel like become progressively like darker in tone. Mm-hmm. I feel like. I think Goblet does a fantastic job of kind of keeping like one foot in both lanes, and it ends up being the best of both worlds as a result.
I think so.
You get a huge amount. I mean, the Wizarding world gets way bigger thanks to the Quidditch World Cup, thanks to the Triwizard Tournament, the Bulgarians, the
like the Bobatons and Durmstrang.
Yep.
Yeah, you get to learn more about like the Dark Mark, and you see the Death Eaters in action for the first time.
Right. Yep. All that's going on. So I think it's like you get to have Harry continuing to explore, continuing to learn more about the Wizarding world. You are continuing to learn more about the Wizarding world. Like there's
by the time you get, this is the last book where there's like that chapter of like, here's all the things you missed.
Yeah,
let me remind you how Quidditch works and stuff like that. By the time you get to Order of the Phoenix, it's like, look, if you don't know by now, why are you reading this book?
Right, It's like
you're in the world now.
You can't pick up book 5 and expect a retelling of how things go.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, no. But yeah, so I don't know. I just and then Goblet obviously ends with the graveyard scene with the death of Cedric, which is like, whoa, they killed someone.
Killed somebody.
Like, someone goes down.
Right. It's like Voldemort always had to have like some victories.
Yeah, he did.
And they were going to have to be deadly and stuff. And it's like right away, just the literal moment he comes back, someone's dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's that. And it's like, it's so, I mean, it's not great that Cedric dies, but it's like, he's the perfect person to have died because he is such just like a good person who had no involvement in anything.
Right.
He's just good guy being good person in world and just gets collateral damaged right away.
He perfectly represents, like the innocence of the people who are Voldemort's victims otherwise. Like, this is somebody who was just doing school, who was just a smart, talented, kind, young individual who was just going through his life, and he is not meant to be there. He's not supposed to be wrapped up in it. Like, even the fact that it comes down to like the tie between Harry and him at the end, and they like decide to like share the victory by like going at it together. It's like, none of that was supposed to happen.
Right.
And the fact that Cedric makes it all the way there is just a testament to like how good he was as a wizard.
Right. Yeah.
And then it's just like, and then there's nothing he can do. Before
Nothing
you know
he
it,
can
he's just dead.
Just dead. No chance to defend himself or anything.
Yeah.
Just kill the spare.
Then we get a huge amount of like Voldemort. It's like you get Voldemort talking.
You get real Voldemort, so far he's just sort of been this like looming threat in the shadows, and now it's like he's back. The anticipation is over.
Right, like that moment that he goes and like touches Harry like on his forehead, and it's like searing through Harry's body. It's like all of a sudden, it's not just this like figment of darkness, this like representation of evil, this name nobody wants to say. It's like, no, he is in physical contact with him in this moment, and like the way this described, like Harry's head is being like ripped in half because like the proximity to the scar is just crazy. Then you get the duel with Priori and Cantatum. Like Harry gets to see his parents,
and like that's like the little mystery that gets paid off this time. It's like, oh, the twin cores pays off, and it's like there's that, and then like all through it, I also love that like all of the tricks you've learned along the way about like, oh, here's things that exist in the wizarding world. Now they're starting to be used like against you.
Right.
Where it's like in the second book, you have to be introduced to Polyjuice Potion. They build it up for a long time, and then Harry and Ron are the ones who use it to their advantage. Right. And it's like, but just because it feels like a book 2 thing, because in book 3, it's not really brought up again at all. And then like, you get into the 4th book, and you're not even thinking Polyjuice is on there. Like, yeah, that was a book 2 thing, that was part of that, but no, it's a huge plot device. It's like it's like
Polyjuice Potion.
What did they say to Fudge at one point? It's like, but you're wizards, certainly you can handle anything. And it's like, but the other guys are wizards too.
They have magic too.
They have
yes,
magic too.
Yes, indeed. And this is that.
Yeah, this is that. So the Polyjuice reveal, and then he's been doing it the whole year is crazy. Like that's such a good reveal.
And Moody's so hard to unpack too, because like his objective all throughout is to help Harry, because by helping Harry, it gets him to the maze,
right?
Which is like the most amazing cover ever,
right? Because
it's like you're like, how could he possibly be dangerous?
Right.
Like he's always looking out for Harry. He always seems to have like one leg up on like even like Snape or anybody like that.
And then even if he is being like more dangerous or a little more crass or something, that's just how Moody is.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just like you're just like, oh, that's so cool. He's like a little against the grain, teaching these kids these dangerous spells because he's so hardcore. Yeah. But no, he just likes putting the Imperious Curse on teenagers.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is definitely like a total mind blown moment where you're just like, what? No. What? No. What? Yeah, I love it. I love Goblet. It's just like a fun world to get lost in, and I'm super looking forward to it. We'll be inside of Goblet by the end of like the tour that we're about to go on. So it is very exciting to be doing that for Through the Gryffindor. So I'm super excited to dive into this one. It's been my number 1 the whole time, and it just remains.
Doesn't change.
Yep,
there you go. All right, as you can see, still very high for me as well.
Right on Goblet.
All right, on to order.
Y'all, we need to take a brief pause right there to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, BetterHelp. It goes without saying that these books are a huge part of our childhood. They made us curious, they made us wonder, and while we've been so fortunate to be able to turn that passion into something that we get to do every single day for work, it's not always easy to maintain your curiosity as the other stressors or even just basic responsibilities of life start to fill your field of view. And wondering about and getting to explore new interests or hobbies can feel like a luxury we used to have but don't don't have the time or energy for anymore. That is where therapy can come in, especially if you're feeling down, burnt out, or creatively depleted. The trap that I personally always fall into is worrying that if I'm not using my time wisely or being productive, then I'm wasting that time. I wouldn't just let myself sit down and read a book just because I wanted to. So in my own sessions, we have worked hard to not only try to rediscover that passion for learning that I know lives deep inside of me, but to also remind myself that it's not selfish to take time for something I enjoy just because. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/super today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/super. Link is in the description down below.
Order of the Phoenix, the Umbridge years.
The Umbridge years. Yeah. An angsty Harry.
Angsty Harry.
And the longest book?
The longest book. Yeah.
Yep.
Here it is. Look at this chunky boy.
Yep. Big old chunk. That's actually pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Art
It's
there.
really fun.
Yeah,
One.
kind of love that. All right. So, you ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1.
Have it at 6.
Oh!
Low.
Okay, a little bit of a disparity on this one.
Yeah, a little bit. I was a little surprised here on my own ranking because like historically I probably would have thought his chamber at being lower than Order, but as I was going through it, I was like, you know what? I don't think so. I
bet if we do this after we do through the Gryffindor, I bet you would change it back.
You think so?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Maybe.
I think I'll be curious to see. I think Order does something extremely well that I don't know that the books do all of that often, but I mean, similar to Prisoner, there's actually a moment in like a oddly similar column, but Umbridge presents a kind of villain that we hate so much that the way in which we get like the positive payoffs are glorious.
Yeah.
Like when they happen. Because like Voldemort, it's like, of course you hate him. Like nobody's gonna like be like, oh yeah, Voldemort had a good point or something like that. You know, it's like he's not that kind of villain.
No, but he's like, you know, but it's not also unsurprising to like, you wouldn't be surprised if someone like cosplayed as Voldemort. That's fun.
Right.
In the same way, you might be surprised if someone cosplayed Umbridge. You'd be like, really?
Yeah.
Umbridge.
Yeah.
That's who you wanted to look like.
On purpose. On
purpose.
Okay. I mean, you know, you do you. No, I mean, it's fine if you do. But yeah, I think Umbridge is kind of interesting because it reminds me of the scene where Harry hates Sirius. Like, he is actually contemplating in the Shrieking Shack killing Sirius Black. Like, he's got the wand out. He's pointing right at him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's like, he intends to do it.
I know, yeah. There's like a voice in his head saying, do it.
Yes, and I think it's because, like, in that moment, Harry's hatred for Sirius is so much greater than it ever is for Voldemort as well, because Sirius is what resulted in Harry's life being torn apart the way that it is, the loss of his parents, the betrayal, the friendship.
Right.
You know, it's like all those things that Harry feels in that moment are all, like, manifesting into this like deep emotion, and I feel like we get a lot of that in Order, which is I think like why I would place it where it does. I mean, it's long. Harry's a bit trying. It can be kind of exhausting at times because you're just like, I need you to not be in such a bad mood all the time.
That is sort of my gripes with it, is that like it's not that I dislike the book or anything, and it's like Umbridge is written well enough that you hate her.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You, the reader, hate her. But it's like, I don't like feeling that way.
No, that's true. Yeah.
So there's that. And then, like, Harry is so moody just the whole year. And it's like, I know, that's, 15-year-old when you're going up against the Dark Lord, whatever.
I mean, we've all been there.
We've all been there, He's, doing his thing and whatnot. But, like, I feel like not only is Harry moody, but then, like, a lot of the things that, like, I feel like didn't meet my expectations the way that you want. So like it's called the Order of the Phoenix, and you arrive at the headquarters of the Order of the Phoenix, and Sirius Black is there, and Remus Lupin is there, and all these other characters are finally all in the same spot, and you're like, oh yeah, all the good guys are getting together, and then they don't do anything. Like, they're just sort of there. They're like, tell you, they're like, oh, we're off, doing things covertly and quietly, but it's like, they're not, like, they don't do a whole lot. They're just sort of like, they exist.
Yeah. I mean, it would be cool if you got to like see them like go off like on a mission or something,
Yeah.
and it was like, you know.
And it's like they do show up at the end in the death chamber and have like a big fight with the Death Eaters,
Right.
and whatnot. But and like I do love that scene in the movie. I love when they all show up and there's like the big battle going on, and that's really great and stuff. But like that's like the only time you really see them like in action until like the Battle of Hogwarts. And
Even then, you don't see as much as I feel like we could.
yeah, it's like you don't like keep getting updates from like their little victories here and there or not, only for like some big thing at the end to happen. On the same note, like Sirius dies, which sucks.
Yep.
Spoilers.
Yep.
But what was frustrating to me about Sirius, and maybe this is the point, is that you spent the entire third book like just being introduced to that character. Like the entire book. He is the focus of that book. And then in the fourth book, even though he's like Harry's godfather and he escapes, he's like barely in it.
True.
Like at all. And then you get to the fifth book and he's also kind of barely in it. So like when he dies, like I don't feel it nearly as much as I feel like I'm supposed to. Like I wanted more time with Sirius. And I think like that's what I mean by maybe that's the point. Like Harry wanted more time with Sirius, but it was stolen from him.
Yes.
And like I get it, like that, like, but like I needed more time with him to feel it on Harry's behalf, you know.
Sure. I can understand the point where you're coming from, and I do also think that like in the name of the Order of the Phoenix and like the grand objective of both the Death Eaters and the Order throughout the entire book is like guarding this like secret weapon.
Oh
that,
yeah,
like
the
Voldemort
prophecy.
didn't have before, and like so it's this big convoluted sort of like you're like, man, what kind of magic have we not been introduced to so far?
The protection of the prophecy as a plot, as like the driving plot, feels flimsy at times.
It feels a little flimsy, especially because like the whole idea is that like Voldemort himself won't go in to get it, but then in the end Voldemort just shows up at the Ministry anyway,
Right.
and it's just sort of like
clearly the Death Eaters have no problem getting to where the prophecy is.
Right.
Like he's got 6 of them in there. Like if it's that important, just go with them.
Right,
You know?
yes.
Like they're in there.
Get in, get out.
Get in, get out. Like
Yeah.
it would have been so easy for them to get in, so I don't know why he doesn't just do it.
Right.
But then in the end, it's also sort of like, even if he got it, like, so what? Like it didn't actually change anything?
What is the key piece of information he learns by getting?
Yeah, or
What
that he
would he have
doesn't
learned?
get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think what he doesn't know the first time is that Voldemort will mark him as his equal.
Okay.
So like, had he had it before he attacked Harry, he might not have attacked someone because he might have been like, oh, by attacking them, I will make them my equal.
Right, I will be creating my own worst enemy.
Right, he might not have acted on it, but it's like, there's not much in the second half of the prophecy that, like, matters, other than, like, one must die at the hand of the other, but, like, he already intends to act that way anyway.
It's very important to him. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I guess it says, like, he will have power of the dark Lord knows not. Like, maybe that makes him feel like, you know, don't worry about Harry or something.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
I don't know.
Well, so then on the flip side, I do think there's a couple of interesting things that are happening inside of this book that I really like, and one of them is that like Harry as a character, he is given sort of like extraordinary abilities at Quidditch.
Yeah.
In this sort of like, you know, it's such a recreational thing that like it never feels like he's going to like beat Voldemort by being good at Quidditch or something
Right.
like that. So it's like that is like the one thing that like he just sort of has this like ace in the hole, natural innate ability, like whatever, he's just good at it. But like we're never given a kind of Harry character who then just like quietly excels at every single thing all the time and always, and he's just the best in the class.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Defense Against the Dark Arts, he does have the most experience.
Right.
He is the best. And getting to see like Dumbledore's army come together and like Harry can actually like deliver those skills in a way that is like important and meaningful in the ultimate fight against Voldemort. I really enjoy that.
I mean, Dumbledore's army is hands down like the best part, I think, of this book.
Yeah.
And like letting Harry come into his own as a leader, and even the way that Dumbledore, it feels almost like he's intending for something like this to happen. Like, where like, you know, he's sort of teaching him that like, you know, what you learn in the classroom is great, but like Defense Against the Dark Arts in the classroom is not really the same as like being good at Defense Against the Dark Arts. So like Hermione's version of being good at it isn't the same as like you guys broke through a pack of enchantments and then you defeated a basilisk using faith in another person and then you know, spared Pettigrew's life, and that was a form of defense against the dark arts. And you like gave Sirius a chance to explain himself, and that was a form of defense against the dark arts. Also, Patronus's, those are cool.
Right,
You
yeah,
know, right.
yeah.
Like all of those things are really defense against the dark arts, not just like stupefy, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think even like in Deathly Hallows, eventually, like when Harry's the one, or when Ron is the one who actually recovers the sword from the pool.
Yes.
And Harry kind of understood that there was like something about this kind of magic, like it
Right.
needed to be Ron. Like he's not being generous in that situation. It's like, no, I'm pretty sure it needs to be Ron.
Yeah, Dumbledore taught him enough about certain kinds of magic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
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 So
Anyway, I think that's probably like I think you get like a lot of time in the wizarding world. You get to see Harry like do a lot of magic, which is really fun. And then I think like, you know, Fred and George setting off the fireworks and like
That's a lot of
making
fun.
Umbridge angry. The salute to Peeves as they leave is pretty extraordinary.
Yes.
Even just sort of like the idea of like Hermione coming into her own and like, you know, standing up against the likes of Umbridge.
Yeah.
You know, gotta love that.
That's all good. And then I like that. I mean, I feel like the book is necessary because otherwise there would always sort of be this question of like, well, like, why is so much put on Harry's shoulders? Like, the ministry, you'd think, exists hopefully in opposition to Voldemort. And it's like, this is the book that's basically like, here's why the government can't help.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah. It's like why was like no one else involved with this other than just like Harry? That's true. Oh, you know the other thing we haven't talked about is you get the huge duel between Dumbledore and Voldemort.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like that had to happen.
The only one he ever feared.
The only one he ever feared, and there it is. You get the big duel.
You get the big duel.
Yeah.
Oddly with the shield. The shield is the one thing I always think I'm like, that's just plain silly.
Yeah, right? It
yeah.
seems funny that, like, Voldemort... Like, typically you think of, like, the heroes with the shield and Voldemort with the sword, but, like, it is literally the other way around.
Yes, yeah.
Where, Harry has a sword of Gryffindor and Voldemort uses a shield. Just this one time.
This is just this one time. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like I almost wish the shield to come back, because it's like, he has all these, like, magical artifacts and stuff that he's, like, trying to collect and things, but, like, why didn't he ever make an artifact?
It's true. Yeah, you'd think that Voldemort's shield would be, like, a rather important one.
Right, yeah.
But it's so
Horcrux,
odd.
Dude.
Because you're right, like it is like it's an act. It's like the Expelliarmus of weapons.
Yeah,
it's purely defensive.
Right, it's like Captain America. You know, it's
yeah.
like he has a shield. I mean, he can use it offensively, but
right.
You know, yeah. The point is to protect.
Right. Yeah. So it's an interesting one, but there we go. Order of the Phoenix.
Order of the Phoenix.
Ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay, man, look at that. It's right there, the lightning struck tower.
Oh boy,
the dark mark.
This one is like it will always represent such a point in time. For Snape kills Dumbledore.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Like it was like the thing that happens that no one could believe.
Right.
Yeah.
I know.
No way.
Like,
no
way.
It
can't be.
Like the whole time we've just been believing Dumbledore. Like this is like, you know, he must be right about Snape. And yet he wasn't.
Yeah, but he wasn't.
But he wasn't.
That's how we have to end this book and then wait in real time for Deathly Hallows to come out.
Oh my gosh, I know. I can't even, like, it was a long time, you guys.
Yeah.
It felt really long. Yeah, I mean, there were books written between the two books about what might happen.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, we're
ready?
time to be alive. Yes.
3, 2, 1.
Boom. Numero 3. Oh, you have it at 2, so we're both pretty high on Half-Blood.
Yeah, we're pretty high on Half-Blood.
Yeah, I mean, Half-Blood's very, very good. I think Harry's gotten over a lot of his wizard angst at this point. We get introduced to Horace Slughorn, who I love as a character. I think he's so fun.
Yes.
Like, he's like a different character than like I've met in like any other book either.
He is very unique because like that's one of the big things about like Slytherin House, especially up till this point, is that like they've been rather singular in nature. Like I think we've often maybe said like Ginny in Slytherin would have been really, really interesting.
I wish Ginny had been in Slytherin.
Yeah, it would have been such a fascinating way to like cap off like the Weasleys, and then it would have given you somebody like who you could actively like, but maybe also explain the perspective more of like House Slytherin, and like I think you could even have like a little bit of a love triangle between Draco, Harry, and Ginny herself.
I can see something like that. And also then if Harry and Ginny end up together, it's more like you're bridging a gap between the two houses.
Precisely.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. So anyway, that has nothing to do with Half-Blood, obviously, but it does have something to do with Horace, which is like the first time you get like a character, and he's gray for sure. I mean, he's
gray,
not,
but he's like a different kind of Slytherin.
Yeah, he's like a jovial kind of like a early Han Solo maybe. You know, like it's weird to compare Horace Slughorn to Han Solo, although they have the same initials, Han Solo, Horace Slughorn. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I was like, they do, right?
Yeah, there we go. Yep.
But you know, like likable, charming, charismatic, but like maybe not in it for all the right reasons.
Right, like
but
self-important. Like he wants to be pulling the strings. He wants to sit on the back row and just sort of like tap things and feel important, but not have to do that much. And,
right. Yeah. Like he's not someone I aspire to be, but like you know, I wouldn't mind knowing him probably.
It's like a fun character to read about. Yeah, it's like would you like knowing him? No, but I like knowing about him.
Right. Yeah. There you go. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I think the Slug Club is kind of interesting.
Oh, it creates such fun dynamics for the students where it's just like they're like all kind of recognize like, oh, it's not cool to have like an exclusionary club, but then the ones who are in are like, oh, me?
I know, yeah, because then the people he taps, you know, you've got like Hermione in there,
right?
You know,
and
she's
and you don't have Ron,
you don't have Ron, you don't have Draco,
right?
Because you know he's sort of like in his family's like actively like in disgrace,
right? Yeah.
So it is a bit of like a shakeup, especially being somebody from House Slytherin, like the way in which he works, the way in which you know things are prioritized, and then of course with Slughorn we also get the introduction to Felix Felicis.
Yes, Felix Felicis is so fun,
which is super fun. It's probably one of my all-time favorite chapters from everything, which is when Harry's just under the influence and he's just being like goofy and silly.
And it's like it's well done because it'd be so easy to have Lucky Potion as like this just solved everything.
Right.
It's like it doesn't like I mean it kind of shows him the path, but it does it in a way that feels like okay, sure. I believe it. Like it wasn't just like a fix all. It's very time limited and it's still like Harry still has to like understand what's happening and make his own decisions and be like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. Got it. Okay, cool.
Yes, yeah. It only allows something to happen that Dumbledore always knew Harry was capable of doing in the first place.
Right, yes.
Which is getting the memory about the Horcruxes from Slughorn.
But then we have the memories.
Then we have the memories and the backstory, the world building that you get around like young Tom Riddle, like at Wool's Orphanage. Like who is this person? Because Voldemort and his motivations up until this point are, you know, limited a little bit. Like,
you don't get a lot of screen time with him, you know?
You don't get a lot of screen time with him. This is sort of like his main origin story, where basically what you discover is that he's just like the product of this bizarre, dark magic, love potion, problematic situation.
Yeah.
And Voldemort basically from the very beginning, like it's not like somebody failed him. It's not like, you know, something happened. Like he doesn't have, I mean, it's not like you could say his life was lacking in trauma.
I mean, his father abandoned him and his mother gave him up upon, you know, basically chose to die rather than raising him.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, it's not like nothing bad ever happened to Tom Riddle, but it almost seems like he was sort of this like innately evil person from the beginning that has been like the product of, you know, this like blood purity mindset for a long time. Because like even the Gaunts where he came from, like the way we have like a whole theory about like the way they treat his mother Merope is like it makes her like subdue her magic a little, and it makes you feel like it's possible she had like a bit of an obscura situation going on. Yeah.
And then it's like if she developed that and then like gave like, you know, that's sort of supposed to be like a magical tumor, like a cancer, like it's a bad thing,
right? Like
innately a bad thing. So like if it almost feels like she gave like human form to it,
a little bit, right?
Like, loveless human form to the Obscurus,
right?
Which is then Voldemort, which is why it's so powerful too.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. So yeah, that's a really cool aspect of Half-Blood Prince, like is just going through and kind of actually having like Dumbledore just level with Harry for the first time.
Oh my gosh, I know. You get tons of Dumbledore in this book and tons of Voldemort, which you've been kind of like normally it's like Voldemort, normally those two just show up at the end.
Right.
Yeah. Like, you'll see them here and there, but it's like, there's always, like, the end of the year where Dumbledore's like, all right, Harry, let's have a chat.
All those things I hadn't told you that I told you I was telling you last year, now it's time to actually tell you everything for reals this time.
Yeah.
But next year I'll have more to say.
Except for some things, okay? Because I gotta keep something, you know, the plot's still moving. So.
Right. You're not ready for all of it.
Not ready for that, but, like, now Harry is ready.
Harry's ready.
Just let him have it. Give it all to him. And then it's like Infinity War, really, in like the MCU.
Yeah.
Where it's like in Infinity, like here's the real secret why Infinity War is as good as it is because Thanos is the main character.
Yeah.
Thanos has the most screen time in Infinity War. That's the secret sauce.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't think Voldemort has the most screen time, but it is the one where he gets a lot of it.
Yeah, you do get a lot more, especially compared to everything before. I mean, Deathly Hallows would be the only thing that would really challenge it, but yeah. So it's fascinating to get all of that story. You've also got Harry and Ginny kind of having
you get the romances start to arrive, and it's like a little more like that's like a new flavor to the story at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, like it's sort of been there. You know, like Harry asked out Cho, and they had like a bad date, and you know she liked Cedric, and he died, and you know Victor and Hermione were like maybe they were dating sort of pen pal style or whatever, and like maybe like Ron was jealous, but like now we're in full force. Like,
yeah. I mean, and to be fair, like I'm not a huge fan of like Lav and Wan.
I mean, not as a couple, but it's super entertaining.
It is super entertaining to watch it unfold and everything. Of course, you feel bad for Hermione, who's just like I just want her to have a good day. Mostly.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time.
But yeah, so I think Half-Blood's cool because it's like it's our last year at Hogwarts before they're gonna go out and like be like in the world proper as well, but like they feel like they're doing big wizard stuff, and then finally it all caps off with the cave. It's
like Dumbledore. It always feels like Dumbledore's off doing his own thing, and it's like, well, never know what he's doing out there. And now it's like, Harry, you want to come? And you're like, oh my gosh, yes, let's go.
We get to go on. Like, yeah, exactly what we're talking about, like with Order of the Phoenix, where like, it'd be so cool to like watch him go on like one of the missions. Like, that he
gets to go.
Yeah,
he gets to go on the mission, and then he does a bunch of cool magic that you don't get to see pretty much anywhere else. They go to the cave. It's like terrifying. The Inferior in there. You get to see Dumbledore at like full power, sort of for a second time, I guess.
When he cast the fire.
At the Inferi, and then you also have the Draco plot happening the whole time, where he's trying to kill Dumbledore, and that's happening, and like no one believes Harry, even though Harry's finally right about Draco
after having suspected him for 6 full years.
Yep, 6 full years, but this time he's actually right, and you kind of get to see that Draco was like actually a pretty good wizard. Like it is a weird kind of like humility, I think, that Draco ends up showing in his like cleverness. That like he is not like, oh, the good guys use this trick, I won't be using that trick, I'm better than them. He's like, I'll gladly, you know what, that was a good idea, I will use every advantage I can take. Like I'm not too proud to use my enemy's tricks. Yeah.
I mean, and you're right, like I think like it almost goes, that's a really well, like it's a great way to say it, because I think like especially part of like what he's doing is like stuff like Hermione has used.
Yeah.
You know, when he's like using her tricks, and it's like this is somebody he's actively to her face. I mean, he's called her like a mudblood, like he's like throwing slurs at her.
Yeah.
And instead it's like, yeah, but she is super smart, and her ideas do work, so I'm gonna do those ideas.
And like the Peruvian darkness powder, it's like he gets that from Fred and George. He's just like oh, I'm not supporting the Weasleys. He's like, doesn't matter. This is just where you buy it, so he does it.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Hey, it's going to work.
It's going to work. So yeah.
No, you're absolutely correct. And I do think this is always like where like when you read the earlier books like Draco, it's like, God, dude, you are really hard to redeem. Like you say some terrible stuff. But you do start to get like a greater amount of perspective about Draco as a character. Like you start to see that he's more like a full-bodied person and not just like this, one-dimensional, just like butthead,
right?
That he's largely been. You also get the duel between Harry and Draco.
Yes, the long-awaited like second duel where Harry uses Sectum Sempra, and then speaking of Sectum Sempra, we have the entire Half-Blood Prince plotline going along with the book as well.
Yes, exactly. Which is another fascinating one, because this is like where Snape is like quietly, successfully making Harry a better wizard.
I know. It's like we said earlier, Lupin is like the other, like the best teacher, and it's like I still think that's true. But it's like Harry like starts thinking of the book and the Half-Blood Prince as like a friend, and the book is teaching him so much, and it's like you get a glimpse into like what their relationship might have been like if like there wasn't all of this like extra baggage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like Harry just being trained by Snape, who doesn't hate him for this thing that's outside of Harry's control. Harry is just an amazing wizard.
Right. Like
Snape is probably a really good teacher.
Yeah, and it also like gives you it like as you go through it and you realize how much Harry is learning from the book, every time after you learn at Snape, you're like, man, Snape's a really good wizard.
Yes. Yeah. Like the respect points for him go way up.
Yeah, so it's a really big Snape book, obviously, because he like kills Dumbledore.
Yeah, he's also the subject of the title.
Yeah, he's the subject of the title, so there's that. And then, like, I mean, the Snape kills Dumbledore thing, I mean, gosh, I don't know if you were you know, there for the reveal, and you had to wait. But like back then, there was this thing called AOL Instant Messenger.
Yep.
How you would chat to your friends and you put up away messages, and people would just put the spoiler in the away message, and it was like you couldn't go anywhere. You know, I can't imagine what it would be like today with social media.
Oh no, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like who's gonna keep this secret? Although that being said, taking it back to Infinity War, like that was like one of those things where there was like a great big collective hush by everybody who saw it.
That's
like,
true.
At least in our corner of the internet, it seemed like people were highly respectful. It's like this is an important moment in pop culture. Don't waste it.
Don't ruin it.
Yeah.
Don't ruin it.
So there's a little bit of that going on. Then of course you have the White Tomb. You get the Phoenix that bursts from Dumbledore's gravestone, which has some of like the Phoenix related lore attached to Dumbledore, which is always fascinating. Like, did he become a Phoenix in death?
Oh,
like,
I know. Like,
can he be a Phoenix? Was he always a Phoenix? Like, I don't know. Yeah, Dumbledore's and Phoenixes. That's like a piece of ongoing mystery in the wizarding world. It's like, what is the actual relationship?
Oh yeah,
Because,
hard to say.
Yeah.
Hard to say.
So something to continue to look out for as we have more Harry Potter content in the future.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yep. There we
All
go.
right, but shall we move on to Deathly Hallows?
Let's do it.
All right, I guess at this point people can just math out where it ranks. I suppose at this point it's possible you could have mathed out what our ranking for Deathly Hallows will be, although I can't remember which ones you've used. So
I know. Yeah, I don't know what you have left. I think I know. I know. All right, ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Number 1.
Number 3.
Deathly Hallows is my favorite Harry Potter book.
Dang, dude.
Yeah.
High praise. The finale gets you.
The finale gets me. I love the finale. It's so good. There's so many payoffs in this book. And there's also, like I was talking about earlier, there's so much wrapped up to it, like nostalgia-wise for me, outside of just the physical story itself.
Sure.
Like,
Yep.
I mean, I remember being, again, like at the book party with all my friends and there with, my then girlfriend at the time, now wife, like there's just too much wrapped up. And then I love the way this book ends, and like all these little payoffs are happening, all these little bows are coming together, and you're like, oh, what? Like I remember like gasping out loud when Harry's like, but I got there first. I took this wand from Draco, and you're like, no, what? That's so cool!
No way! No way!
Yeah, so that still gets me. I think that's so fun. And it's also, this book is like non-stop. Like, there's the beginning chapters, like, where they get to the wedding. And the moment the wedding is over, it is like full tilt for the rest of the book.
I mean, by the time the weddings happen, you've already had the Battle of the Seven Potters.
Yes. Like, so, even that, right? Like,
Hagrid's already died.
I know, it's like...
No!
It starts here, tiny little go,
Yeah.
It is off to the... There's like barely any downtime in it,
No, it's definitely like very epic. Like this is going to be one that it'd be fascinating to see how we do it on Through the Gryffindor, because it almost seems like you're going to have to be like chapter 12 part 1, chapter 12 part 2. Like,
oh, I know, right,
like both hour-long episodes, because that's how much you got to cover from chapter 12 maybe.
Yeah.
No, which will be
What
very...
is chapter 12?
I know, yeah, out of curiosity. What do we got
That's why
there?
you do it. Yeah, you can keep talking.
Look at this.
Let's see. It's a mirror.
How'd I do?
Chapter 12 is Magic is Might.
Magic is might. So Ministry of Magic.
Ministry of Magic.
Oh god, incidentally one of my least favorite scenes.
By the way, you said the worst chapter earlier was the one in Chamber of Secrets called Chamber of Secrets. I'm pretty sure the worst chapter is Aunt Marge.
Oh, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Aunt Marge was, we were doing Aunt Marge on tour in New York City for the podcast, and it was so difficult.
Yeah.
Because you're just having to like talk about like drowning puppies and all sorts of just Marge is just being a tremendously terrible human being.
Yeah.
I mean, she is up there with people you hate, max level. However, the reason you brought that up though is because I have always forever not liked the Ministry of Magic heist inside of Deathly Hallows. I think it takes the Polyjuice Potion usage like one step too far for me, to the point where I'm just like, I don't want it to be used again. And didn't we already use it earlier in this book so that Harry could not be Harry at the wedding and he's Barney instead? And
it does seem like suddenly there is like, where in Goblet it feels like, oh, the trick has been used against me. And
yes.
It's fun in Goblet when Moody was using Polyjuice Potion the whole time. It starts to feel less fun by the time you get to Ministry when Harry used it at the wedding, and then
the
they
Battle
use
of the Seven Potters.
The Battle of the Seven Potters, and then Godric's Hollow is after that, but they use it again.
Yes, yeah. And then Bellatrix.
Yeah, Bellatrix they use it. It's like all of a sudden it's just like it's this enormous hurdle for them to overcome as second years, and suddenly they just have a ton of it. Yeah, and then like Draco uses it for Crabbe and Goyle. Like
yes, yeah.
Back the year before, so it's like it starts to feel a little overused by the time we get to the Ministry.
Yes, right. and I think that's part of like what gets me a little bit. The pros that I have for this though is that I mean the final scene between Harry and Voldemort, like there's a couple of like really interesting things that happen. I have like a fly right in front of my face. And so the final scene that happens with Dumbledore and Voldemort, I think, is incredible. Like, interestingly, you have these two sets of duels that are going on that are both involving, like, 3 people. So they're kind of, like, symbolizing this idea of, like, a triangle. And then in, like, when they're having the conversation, like, back and forth between Harry and Voldemort, they're, like, walking in a perfect circle. Yeah. And then finally there's the blast right through the middle. So it's, like, that final scene is, like, symbolizing the Deathly Hallows.
Right, like, it draws them on the floor.
Yes, yeah. It's like, what?
Right.
Like, that is so cool. And yeah, you're right. Like all the different ways in which Harry has finally understood everything about what's going on, and like the ways in which Voldemort had like fallen into like all of his own traps, the ways in which Harry in the end and like all of Dumbledore's steps that he's like taken along the way pay off to the tune of like Harry is not a killer and he's still attempting to reason with Voldemort down into the very last moment.
Oh, I know. He like tells him like, feel for some remorse. It's your last chance. And it's like, well, he doesn't.
He doesn't. And then even the last spell though, it used to bother me that Harry used Expelliarmus, but it's absolutely grown on me that it's like, no, Harry is not someone who kills. Like,
right.
That's not
he's steadfast to the end.
Yeah. He is not going to Avada Kedavra him. And so that's all amazing. I really like the Prince's Tale, where you finally get to fully understand Snape completely and totally, and like that is, I mean, it's probably the piece of the book that I bet we use most often, other than like King's Cross Station,
which is the next. No, I guess it's not the next chapter.
King's Cross, is that right?
It's like two chapters later.
Yeah, into the forest again. Yeah, Prince's Tale. Yeah. Like King's Cross, we use that one all the time. But King's Cross is a great chapter. You gotta get like a lot more Dumbledore background.
You do, yeah.
And it's like weird because even though Dumbledore died, he's still fairly present in this book via like the life and lies of Albus Dumbledore, but it's like in a much different context where normally Dumbledore is this like guiding light for Harry the whole time, and now even that he can't rely on.
Yes.
Like it feels like his foundation has crumbled a little bit. And it's like, it's also, the book just feels a lot different. It stands apart from the other ones because they are not at Hogwarts the entire time.
Yes.
Like, and it's like, we've removed all of the school part of it, and now it's just Harry, Ron, and Hermione on their own basically the whole time.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one. Like, you know, I know that like I wouldn't disagree with your sentiment that like action is happening the whole time, but like from the time that they have to leave the wedding and they're sort of like on their own and they're like living at number 12 for a little while, they do the Ministry heist, then they're like out, you know, camping in the forest of Dean and everywhere else. Like, sometimes like I feel like the whole camping sequence seems like unnecessarily like uncomfortable. Like they're hungry, they're tired, they're stressed.
There is a certain amount, like especially like when they come across like Dean Thomas and friends and they're just like summoning fish out of the river. It's like, guys, you couldn't think of that?
Right, I know, yeah. Like that's like one of those things where it's like we almost need to be like told. It's like because it wouldn't be unreasonable to say, like, a fisherman would be better at catching fish than somebody who is not a fisherman.
Right.
So, like, it's not, like, unreasonable to be like, you know, you can't just summon fish from the water.
Right, and like yet, you gotta know where they are or something.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it's still just like, Osseo salmon, and they just come flopping out on the bank. And it's just like, well, good, what... All right.
Well, why are they so hungry then?
Come on, guys. Like, you know, or, like, even, like, I think, like, Gamp's Law of Elemental Transfiguration, it's like you can't like make food out of nothing, but you can like multiply it if you have some. And it's like, okay, they like steal egg, or they like buy eggs. I think they like leave, you know, money for like the chicken coop or whatever. And it's like multiply the eggs,
guys.
You know, like you know, there. It just seems like there are things where it's like, God, they're just so. I mean, it's a little bit of like the book 5 problem, where it's just like they're so miserable, they're so upset.
Well, they have the Horcrux too. It's like there's also that happening.
Yes, which is looming over them, and it's not supposed to be like a bright and sunny book, you know, for most of of what's going on.
But like, I love the way the adventure just moved, like the location, like that is what Harry Potter often lacks because everything just happens at Hogwarts all the time. Like this time you are like out in the world, like instead of just being at Hogwarts, you get to go to like, I mean, you start at the Burrow and then you eventually go to like Godric's Hollow, you go to the Ministry of Magic, you go to Gringotts, you go to Malfoy Manor, you know, like you are all over the place and you're like all these places you've heard of, and it's like, they set up in book one, like, oh, there's no, you know, it'd be foolish to try and rob Gringotts. And it's like, but they do. It's like, of course they have to say that, you know? But, like, you don't think that's going to be a huge plot point. But even in, like, book one, Hagrid mentions, like, they say there's dragons guarding the lower vaults or whatever. And it's like, you think that's just set up for Hagrid saying, like, I've always wanted a dragon, because later he gets Norbert. But no, there's actually a dragon fight in Gringotts. And, like, that's so cool.
It is very epic.
Yeah.
It is
so
very epic.
I love that. And then it's like, and then at the end, it's like the Battle of Hogwarts. It's like, of course you've got to have a big battle at the castle. Like, of course. Like, how did you not see it coming? Like, you know, like that's typically what castles are for. They're not usually schools. You know, it's so fun that it ends at Hogwarts in this giant battle. Like, that's so fun.
I've always wanted to use that spell.
Yeah, right.
It's so good. It's so good.
I've always wanted to use that spell.
Although, yeah, so let's see here. I love the tale of the three brothers, which I think
Yes.
is super fascinating. That's another one we pull information from all the time when it
Yes.
comes to, like, who is Death, who are the Peverell brothers, like, where do they stand, like, where do they, you know, where were they in relation to the founders? Clearly, these are, like, powerful artifacts that, like, exceed all other, like, abilities of anything else we see. That being said, I sometimes find myself being, like, a little bit, like, in the middle ground. Like, I don't dislike the Hallows or anything, but like I sometimes am not like enamored with them either.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I remember the first time I ever read it, I think I got like, it's almost embarrassing to say now, but like maybe like mildly like confused between the Hallows and the Horcruxes and like all these like bits of like made up terminology and stuff. I think I was kind of like, what? I mean, obviously, like, now I'm extremely well versed in it. It's not something I, like, struggle with discerning the difference between. But, like, throwing this, like, whole other set of artifacts into the equation when you're already hunting for, like, a big batch of artifacts, like, I think sometimes can come across as, like, a little bit messy.
Yeah, I do remember thinking about the Elder Wand specifically, that they're, like, suddenly treating, like, the Elder Wand like it's the most powerful wand. And I remember thinking, like, well, like, the wand's only ever as good as the wizard anyway. Like, what does it mean to be a more powerful wand?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clearly it's a huge driving force in the book for Voldemort to get it so he can beat Harry.
Right.
Yeah. But even that, it just feels like that's Voldemort still misunderstanding magic. He's just thinking of magic as power and not like, you know, I think in the end it is more about the wizard than the wand.
Sure. I mean, yeah, there's plenty of arguments to be made. Like in like the big caveat has always just been that Harry's able to repair his Holly Wand. But I mean, that is the only exceptional thing we ever see the Elder Wand capable of doing. Like that is its one unique ability that even Ollivander, who's been, you know, working with wands and his, you know, heritage has been working with wands forever and ever and ever and ever, going back hundreds of years. Yeah. Like, he doesn't even know how it can be done. And so the Elder Wand doing that, like, you know, it can do something that is exceptional.
Right.
And that is the ultimate outcome. So that's, I mean, you know, there's that. The other big sort of like gripe that I have like a little bit with it is I always just sort of like want a better redemption for Draco.
I do wish Draco had a better redemption story here. Like maybe he stepped in at some point, or maybe Draco, like, I don't know, like they explained the diadem to him or something.
Yeah.
Like you know, like we're like he can't tell him it's a Horcrux or something. It's like, we need to destroy this in order to defeat Voldemort, and like that's enough for Draco to like cast the Fiend Fire. Right. And then like if Draco gets a kill, that just feels so much better than like Goyle or Crabbe or whoever gets it.
I think Crabbe in the books technically gets it, which always feels slightly ridiculous.
Right. It's like, no, come on, Draco's one of the main characters. Like it would like it, you know, having Crabbe on that list with like Dumbledore, Harry, Hermione, Ron, Neville, and Crabbe. It's like Draco's the clear other character who should have gotten a kill.
Yeah, and the other big thing that we've always said is that, like, you know, if you were to take like the main big characters, you know, you've got like Harry is like the modern day version of James, and Ron is the modern day version of Sirius, Hermione's the modern day version of Remus. Neville, modern day version of Peter, and we've always said Luna is the modern day version of Snape, kind of both being like outcasts. But all of the new versions of everybody are all better versions of their like predecessors.
Yeah.
You know, like Harry doesn't let like arrogance get the best of him the same way that like James maybe did. Like Luna doesn't let the fact that like people like, you know, think she's odd define who she is. She embraces who she is for the better versus like Snape, who lets it like define him forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and can't let it go.
Right.
You know, so and then like Hermione, you know, she is a, you know, Muggle-born,
right.
Just the way that like Lupin is not just the way they're different, but like, you know, Lupin is a werewolf, and it's like
Lupin defines himself by being a werewolf, whereas Hermione does not define herself by being a Muggle-born.
Exactly. And I think that's where, you know, because I know plenty of people are sort of like, you know, on their keyboards right now, they'll be like, you know, not every villain needs a redemption arc or whatever. And it's like, you know, Voldemort doesn't need a redemption arc. Umbridge doesn't need a redemption arc.
Right.
You know, Marge doesn't need a redemption arc. The Dursleys don't really get a redemption arc. You know, it's like, but Draco, I think the big thing is that he's been a child for so much of the story. He can't help the world in which he grew up in. You know, like it just simply is, you know, like that's what he's been told his whole life. As of book 6, though, Draco for the very first time has to shoulder his own responsibilities. He has to see what it's like to actually go out there and put himself on the line and like put his money where his mouth is. And I think when it ultimately comes down to it, he doesn't take the kill. And so I think for the first time as of book 6, Draco is thinking on his own. And so it's like maybe what you get to start like to see is the growth that comes where he's like, I don't want to do these things. Like, I don't want to kill my classmates.
Right.
Like I'm not I mean, sure, maybe I don't like Granger, but like I don't want her dead.
Right. It's like his whole life he's thought he wanted to grow up and be a Death Eater, and it's like in book 6, it's like that's basically what happens.
Right.
And it's like it turns out like as he's doing it, he's like, actually, this is bad.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it nearly kills him in
Yeah.
the process. I mean, he's like, he looks terrible, he's exhausted, he's breaking down, he's consulting Moaning Myrtle of all people, like you know,
and then, like when push comes to shove, like he almost accomplishes his plan of killing Dumbledore, and he like abandons. Like, he can't do it.
Right.
And it's like, even though doing that would have, like, restored... Like, he would have been honored forever by Voldemort.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he would have been in the inner echelon. Yeah, he would have.
He's, like, the right-hand man.
Right. So, yeah, it would have been a huge, like, shift for where the Malfoy family stands with Voldemort. And so, yeah, like, I mean, I guess you get, like, a little bit with Draco where, like, he doesn't tell the Snatchers that Harry is Harry, despite the fact he definitely knows. But like, it's like wimbly wombly at best.
Right.
Like, it's not like a really good moment. I've always thought it'd be like really cool if like Draco like cast a Patronus, you know, at some point in time.
Or, that would have been cool.
You know, threw Harry a wand, or you know, like destroyed one of the Horcruxes, or
something.
Just something. Just anything that sort of like shows like, you know, when it really became Draco's own decision that he kind of like grew into his own shoes a little bit.
Right. Like at best he just sort of stops supporting Voldemort.
Right. Yeah.
As opposed to like actively opposing him.
Right.
Right.
Which even that seems wild, given just like how important Narcissa ends up being to those final moments.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You know, and that's another huge theme that I think is beautifully tied with a ribbon right there at the end, is this idea of like a mother's love.
Yeah.
You know, you've got Narcissa, who basically is betraying Voldemort in the name of discovering if Draco is safe. Mm-hmm. You've got Molly stepping in against Bellatrix in the name of protecting Ginny. And then you've got Lily's love and sacrifice saving Harry all the way through to the very end.
Yeah.
You know, these are like massive themes that like find their way to, you know, the finishing stretch there.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, like, you know, there are like little things that I can like pick at with it.
Right.
It's not that I don't love it. Just the same way I would be with all of these. Like,
right.
None of them are my least favorite. I just have to put them in order.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Exactly. It's like trying to choose your favorite kid.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly. So, there we go. I wonder what the most shocking of any of these was.
Let us know. Which of our rankings do you disagree with the most? And which of the books is your favorite?
Yeah, definitely let us know in the towel section down below. Be sure to be respectful. Obviously, everybody's going to have their own reasons why each book is special to them for some particular reason. So, you know, definitely, I think, encourage good discussion down there, you know.
Yeah.
Defend your points, but yeah, kind of keep that respect level in line and make sure that, you know, we're not attacking people for their opinions.
Absolutely, we don't need to be doing that.
Yeah, of course.
But otherwise, thank you so much for watching our review review and ranking of all 7 Harry Potter books. If you want to see us rank the movies, you can check out this video right here. But otherwise, until next time, bye!